Good evening again. Good to see you all here this evening as we open the pages of God's Word to study from it and to learn from it. I want to continue our thoughts from this morning from 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 7, and then also Titus chapter 1, and our text this evening, verses 5 through 11. Paul is discussing with these two men the qualifications of a man to be an elder. Elders in the church, in the Lord's church, are few and far between. I believe this is a crucial moment in the Lord's church as the church moves forward. More and more churches are not seeking to have men appointed as elders. Or, on the other side, appointing men to be elders who are not qualified to be elders by God, by what God has said. So the future of the church depends on the actions taken in the choosing of qualified men to be leaders or to lead as elders. Our text from these lessons, of course, is 1 Timothy chapter 3 and Titus chapter 1. And as we stated this morning, too, and we'll reiterate here, that we need to be careful that we do not add qualifications to this or we do not take away qualifications. These qualifications that are set forth by God must be adhered to in every way. So just as we review just a little bit for this evening from this morning, three areas of the life of an elder. And in no way are these in any order according to as you read the scriptures down through here, either in Timothy or Titus. But one of those areas is his experience in life. In 1 Timothy 3, verse 2, he's to be apt to teach. Titus, in Titus chapter 1 and verse 9, says he's to hold to the faithful word which is according to the teaching. The end of that verse, or toward the end of that verse, in verse 9, says that he may be able to exhort in sound doctrine and to convict the gainsayers. 1 Timothy says in verse 6 that he is not to be a novice. Verse 1 of 1 Timothy 3 says that he is to desire the office. Then concerning his life as far as his domestic relations, he's to be the husband of one wife, verse 4 of 1 Timothy 3. Has children that believe, verse 4. Ruleth his own house well, having his children in all subjection and gravity. Verse 11, an elder's wife must be grave, not slanderous, temperate, faithful in all things. The third area we looked at this morning is concerning his habits of life. Verse 2 is to be temperate or vigilant, orderly, or of good behavior. Verse 3 says not to be a brawler or given to wine. So as we further look at these qualifications as God has set, we begin this evening to look at the man's character. Verse 7 of 1 Timothy 3 says, moreover, he must have a good testimony from them that are without, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. We might simply put it as, but he must have a good reputation in the community. I want to spend a little bit of time, the majority of our time here, looking at this verse here, verse 7. I break down these statements as what Timothy is written to Timothy here. Or somebody says it must have a good testimony or a good report. The noun in this denotes the giving of information about a person or an event arising out of the speaker's direct knowledge. Or it denotes the content of what one has said or to which he has borne witness. Or it denotes what is said about a person based upon evaluation of that person's conduct. Translated, and also translated with the outsiders, those that are without, that are the subject then of the verb in the sentence, meaning that they speak well of him. It is a fact that those outside the church are very critical of those within the church. For this and other reasons, the elders must guard their manner of life. He must have a good testimony. He must be then from them that are without. When used as a substantive with the definite article as it is here, this adverb that's here becomes a figurative extension of the meaning of from outside and denotes all persons who are not members of a particular group. In other words, this means of people who are not members of the church or non-Christians. In matters of moral and religious matters, the testimony that is given is a judgment that is passed upon one person by another. Usually referring to a positive judgment. And here it refers to a good reputation or a recommendation. A good testimony of outsiders means a good reputation with outsiders, and it concerns a good verdict on the overseer's commitment to his faith. In the matter of his wider reputation, he must be well regarded in society. This is the testimony that is given by outsiders concerning the moral worth of those who serve as or candidates or those who are being selected to be overseers. He's to be without reproach. Verse 2. Having questionable integrity. Sinless perfection is not required of Christians, nor is it required of elders. But a man without reproach or blameless is a man against whom no charge of immorality or holding false doctrine then is alleged. Back down in verse 7, the last part of verse 7. Lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. Indicating the purpose or reason for the preceding requirement. He must guard against his behavior that is against the standard of morality held by society. If an overseer or elder does not do what he publicly proclaims and teaches, he will receive, as we all as Christians, keep this in mind, this is we can take this as just being Christians as well. He will receive a well-deserved derision from those without. An overseer who did not or does not have a good testimony with those without, from those without, would be then reproached by those same ones. The ones that are without would be ready to put an unfavorable interpretation on his slightest word or deed. They would perhaps accuse him then of hypocrisy. Not only would they reproach him, but also the Christians would reproach such a man as well. They would bring reproach up on the Lord's church as well. Falling into reproach is one situation to be avoided. And falling into a trap set by the devil is the subsequent situation that it probably would result from the first. He must be aware of falling into these two things: fall into reproach from those without, and then fall into the trap of the devil. If an overseer incurs slander, he may well be caught or may well get caught in a snare set by the devil. To discredit him. And in turn, then, this would discredit the church. He may fall into the devil's snare when people reproach him. But if this man sees that he can get away with reproachable conduct and still be an overseer, he may become so bold as to think he could get away with anything. And then he would fall into the devil's trap. Or that is, he would fall into the devil's power. The devil's plan, in many ways, is to discredit those who follow Christ, discredit the church. So when outsiders reproach the overseer, the devil's plan has been accomplished. So therefore, falling into reproach from those without is described then as falling into the trap the devil has set for him. So he must be mindful of that always. He must have the good testimony or have a good reputation from those without the church. In Titus chapter 1 and verse 8, Titus says there that he must be just. He must be upright. He must be reliable. He must be honest. He must be ethical. He must be fair. He must be one who keeps the commandments of God. Verse 8 and also 1 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 2 says he's to be sober or sober-minded. Safe and or sound in mind. One who is not under the control of his passions. The idea then is that he should have his desires and his passions under control or well regulated. Perhaps that we might think of, in our language, we might think of the word prudent. Prudent, I believe, would come nearer to the meaning of the word of here that is used than any word that we might have in our English language. Verse 8 of Titus 1 also says that he is to be holy, devoted, and separated to God. He must be pious. He must be devout. He must be faithful in all his duties to God. He says also there in verse 8 is to be a lover of good. It is thought that some think this is talking about men, a lover of good men. But I believe it applies to anything good or anything that is good. Galatians chapter 6 and verse 10 says that we're to show good to all men, especially to those of the household of faith. But we're to show good to all. A lover of good is a person who is devoted to what is best, one who loves good, what is good in a person's actions or qualities. One who is both good and does good. But one that simply would say, one who has a helpful spirit. Since it follows, there in verse 8, hospitality. It seems that the lover of good men is not likely, but a lover of goodness, a lover of all that is good. It's included in just as a general term. A lover of good, could it imply all of what God says of the man? Hence, it could be said that this is one of, if not the most essential qualification that an elder is to have. A man who sustains the office of an elder should love everything that is good. Be always ready to promote it. He should love every man and everything. It says here, he's to be given, beginning of verse 8, given to hospitality, or a lover of hospitality. Verse 2 of 1 Timothy chapter 3. He's to be courteous. He's to be friendly, have a friendly, a kindly disposition. The ability to warm and to cheer others, enjoy having people in their home. This is one of the things that helps an elder then to get to know the flock. He must be self-controlled. Verse 8. Having the power or control over his passions and or desires. He must be a master of self. Keeping one's actions and thoughts under the proper restraint. Verse 7 says that he's not to be a striker. An elder is not to be hot-headed or have an uncontrolled temper. He is not to be contentious in chapter 3 and verse 3 of Timothy as well. Not to be contentious or quarrelsome. The local congregation, as well as those from without, would lose the confidence and trust in such a man who is as this. He's not to be greedy or filthy lucre, or not be a lover of money. Paul warned Timothy that these types of persons would come, those who would be lovers of money in the second letter. That there would be lovers of money, these grievous times that would come. The elder or the man to be considered for an elder is not to fall into that kind of thinking that money is what there is. With Paul later in the chapter here, or the letter of first letter, chapter 6 and verse 10, he says the love of money is the root of all evil. He's not to use his office as a means of gain monetarily. He's not to be covetous. The idea in here is to be covetous, or one who is devoted to money. Such an attitude as this would then tempt him to use his position for ungodly gain. He's not to be self-willed, not selfish or self-seeking. Keeping in mind that he has the care of the souls of the local congregation. Self-interest or selfish or self-seeking, one who has that mind and that attitude cannot care for the souls of the congregation. He's not to be dominated by self-interest. He's to be considerate of the thoughts and the feelings of others, willing to listen to others, not soon angry. Do not lose or does not lose his temper quickly. We're told that we're to be slow to anger. Not soon angry, the phrase literally meaning not prone to anger. He is not to be quick, as the saying we have, to fly off the handle and make rash statements. But he is to be gentle. Chapter 3 in 1 Timothy and verse 3. Not harsh, but tender in demeanor. His manners reined in. He's to be polite. He's to be courteous. He's to be peaceful. Those who are gentle have much greater success than those who are harsh and unpleasant. He is not to be, verse 3 of 1 Timothy, he is not to be contentious. He is not to be factious. He is not to be a brawler. In 2 Timothy chapter 2 and in verse 24, the Apostle Paul writes, "And the Lord's servant must not strive, but be gentle towards all, apt to teach, forbearing." Galatians chapter 5, the works of the flesh, in verse 20, is the word factious, or meaning the same thing as contentious or quarrelsome. God considered temper to be such a terrible thing for an elder to have. It is mentioned in 3 different ways in these qualifications. An elder is not given to altercation in words. He is not to have a factious or quarrelsome spirit about him. Keep in mind, this is God's. This is God's rules that are set down for a man if he desires or seeks the office of a bishop. It is not ours. It is our due diligence to understand these. And I'll reiterate again from this morning. Study these things on your own. Get to know them, what they mean, what it means for the man, and as this morning, his experience in life, his domestic relations, his habits of life, and then tonight his character. All of what God says in these 2 letters must be considered. Yes, some of them overlap, but all of what God has said must be considered. It is not me or you that can take away from any of these. It is not me or you who can add anything to these. But the man that is to be considered to serve as an elder in the church, he must meet all of God's qualifications. He must possess. An elder must have all these qualifications. He must possess each quality. It is not a combined qualification of the men to be considered. That one can meet some of those and another can meet some of those, and if there's more than 2, then some can meet some of the others. No. Each individual man must meet these qualifications. These qualifications, as God has set, must be taught. Must be taught to our young men, to instill in them the desire to serve when the time comes. These qualifications are good for us all to possess as Christians. And it is not, these qualifications there that are set forth, it is not that we're going to appoint elders. They've met this one, we check it off. They met this one to check it off, and met this one. It's not a checkbox, but that is a continual thing. They must constantly prove themselves worthy to serve as an elder. It is an office that God desires for all the churches. It is why that Paul said to go and appoint elders in every church. That should be each and every local congregation's desire as well, to appoint elders. to look to see what men are qualified to serve in that way. And if there's not men to serve at the present time, when the church is looking to appoint those, then it would behoove us to study on it. To teach, to be knowledgeable of these things. So at some point later, there will be men who meet these qualifications. It is a grave responsibility. It is not to be taken lightly. This is what God has said. That's what we must adhere to. As we close this evening, we don't want to close or leave here without offering the invitation. The invitation of Christ in Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 to 30 says, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." If you're here this evening and not a child of God, what's holding you back? We want to encourage you and help you in any way that we can. But it's your desire to put Christ on in baptism this evening. Or as an erring child of God, we want to encourage you as well and help you and encourage you in any way that we can to repent of your sin and ask God for His forgiveness. The opportunity now. Come unto me. Come unto Him. Jesus. He will give you rest. If we can help you and encourage you this evening, why not come now while we stand and while we sing?